So, and obviously it's a self-petition as well, right? If you kind of provide some points on like what is self-petition, because most of the people think that employer files this, and now if it's not employment is not required, then who can file, how it can file, and what does self-petition means?
Yeah, so there are two employment-based, case types under U.S. immigration law that are self-petitions, meaning you do not need an employer sponsor. One is what we're talking about, which is the EB1A, which is first category, extraordinary ability. It has other statutory requirements, but it does not require an employer. You can petition yourself, meaning you can directly submit an I-140 form without an employer, and you are required to include evidence to support your claim for the classification, right? So that's what's called a self-petition. And the other category of self-petition under the employment-based immigration system in the US is the national interest waiver, which is an EB2 level. So it's a much easier than an EB1A in terms of the requirements. But of course, if you're on a backlog, it's not going to help you acquire a green card. Although I think the EB2 NIW is still very interesting for people on a backlog because it frees you of the need to have an employer sponsor your I-140. So you don't have to be on an H-1B with an employer-sponsored I-140 necessarily. If you have your own EB2 I-140 approved, it's personal to you and it remains with you regardless of, like, say you decide, hey, I'm going to go to Canada, I'm going to go to Singapore, I'm going to go back to India, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there. That EB2 approval stays with you regardless of your employment situation. And whenever it does become current, you can use it to immigrate to the US, or it could be a good kind of preliminary approach to set a priority date if you do not already have an I-140, because nowadays many employers don't want to submit an I-140 for an employee. So you can kind of, do your own I-140 with the EB2 national interest waiver, and the requirements are much less stringent than the EB1A.
Okay. And this is a very good point, because again, a lot of people aren't aware that employers is only one of the many ways to provide petition and apply for the permanent residency for green card. And as you mentioned, EB1A and the national interest waiver is the one. What about EB1B?
So EB1B has to have a sponsor. So you have to have a private employer or university sponsor you, and it's reserved for research-only professionals. So like if you are working even for a private employer as a researcher, then you may qualify for EB1B.